righty. What an interesting Thursday night game. What I mean by interesting is not really technically interesting. I mean, what an unfortunate Thursday, unless you had James Cook and Devon Achane. Greetings and salutations, everyone. My name is Andrew Kirchhoff, and welcome to our Thursday night live stream for Week 2 of the 2024 fantasy football season. Of course, Week 2 has begun, and we're already in shambles. I've told you guys before, just give it time. Some of these players will have themselves breakout performances, and others will continue to be mediocre, or your starting quarterback will go headfirst into a safety's chest and knock himself out of the game. It's, I don't even know anymore. It is so interesting how these specific things happen. But either way, who would have guessed that Josh Allen, out of all the quarterbacks in a specific week, is going to finish with only one touchdown and 139 passing yards? James Cook, again, fantastic. We love to see it. Anytime that he is scoring touchdowns at a potentially higher rate than he typically does, it's only going to help for our fantasy purposes. Achane on the ground, through the air, an absolute machine. But in the absence of Tua Tagovailoa, I mean, Waddle and Tyreek Hill with Skylar Thompson are just average wide receivers. They're really nothing special. I mean, shoot, even before Tua left the game, Jonnu Smith, hey, listen, you guys know I'm the president of the Jonnu Smith fan club. I was starting to get excited, but then as soon as Tua's gone, we're in a little bit of trouble. Either way, over the course of the next hour, I'm going to be answering questions. If you guys have a question and you're going to send it in via Super Chat or potentially type it in the live chat, do me a favor and include your scoring format. That definitely does end up giving you an opportunity of just making it simpler for me to answer said question in terms of understanding whether it's a standard, half PPR, full PPR. More context, the better. But please be sure to attach your question to the message. I already see Young Money who sent in a super chat. Nothing's attached to it. Young Money, do me a favor, type in the chat immediately before it gets lost. Either way, in terms of a review of this overall game, it was a one-sided affair. There was no chance for, I think Khalil Shakir is the only, let me look up these stats. I think Khalil Shakir was the only person on this team that did anything in terms of receiving. 5 receptions for 54. Kincaid, 4 for 33. James Cook was the only receiving touchdown winner in this specific circumstance, but as an offense, 19 passing attempts, of course, nobody's going to score anything. And then on the other side, it's literally the Devon Achane show, with everybody else just being, unfortunately, just irrelevant because of the injury. And obviously, before even going out with the concussion, throwing 3 interceptions. Brutal, but it is what it is. So if you guys have any questions, of course, regarding the remainder of this upcoming week, let me know. And let's get into it, shall we? Let's begin with the first question of the day in regards to Super Chats. We have Ozzy, who sends in a question. Thank you, Ozzy. Full PPR, London, Dortch, McConkey, or Wan'Dale Robinson. If Neighbors' injury, who, again, he popped up on the injury report earlier today. If Neighbors somehow, some way is going to be out, then Wan'Dale Robinson gets a huge upgrade. But until that overall circumstance, I'm probably going to start Drake London out of the group that you mentioned. If I was to give you an order in which I would start these players, Ozzy, it would be London 1, McConkey 2, Wan'Dale Robinson 3, and Dortch 4. Thank you. Appreciate it. Let's see here. Okay, so Young Money retracted that, so he'll be good to go once that kind of figures itself out. Crypt Keeper sends in a question. Thank you, Crypt. Appreciate it. PPR, trade Ramondre Stevenson or Aaron Jones for Ayuk. I'd be willing to trade either of the two. I think my allegiance as it currently stands is going to lean towards preferring Aaron Jones rest of season in comparison to Ramondre, mainly because I believe in the Minnesota Vikings offense far more as it pertains to the remainder of the season in terms of value. So as it currently stands, I wouldn't mind moving Ramondre there for the value of Ayuk if you're able to acquire that. Thank you for the question, Crypt. Appreciate it. All right, let's see here. People are asking questions like, is Tua done? I mean, again, I can give you my opinion, but it's irrelevant. Like, my opinion on Tua being done is completely irrelevant. Now, time will tell as to what we do with Jalen Waddle, Tyreek Hill, Devon Achane. This is all as to whether or not he is going to return in a, relatively, I would say, I don't even know. Because the last time he was out with a concussion, they just ended his season, right? So there's a chance that he could go to the IR and miss the next 4 weeks. Which at that point, unless they bring in another quarterback, Skylar Thompson really isn't going to be able to get the job done. Even before this stream started, I went and I looked at Skylar Thompson when he was starting in 2022 and what Tyreek Hill's numbers were in correspondence with him being the starter. Like, okay, so for example, There were 3 games in the back of the 2022 season in which Skylar Thompson was a starting quarterback. And in those games, Tyreek Hill in a half PPR, 13.7, 3.3, and then in the postseason, 12.9. So again, you take a wide receiver of the caliber of Tyreek Hill, you pair him up with Skylar Thompson, and he drops 10 points per game on average in terms of his typical performances. So that is what we should probably anticipate to see. Now, if you're asking Andrew, should I get out of it by trading? Until we know what the actual confirmed status of the potential return of Tyreek Hill is, Tua Tagovailoa is, I can't objectively tell you to make a move. But obviously, we know that he has a storied history of concussions, especially back in 2022. And if you can somehow get, or at least recoup, similar value to a Tyreek Hill, which again is rare, very, very, very difficult to do so, a move wouldn't be terrible. But again, that's assuming the worst case scenario where Tua's out for an extended period of time. All right, let's see here. Michael Amato sent in a question. Thank you, Michael. Says, gonna vent, Andy. So I drafted Puka Nacua and Waddle. My season is over. And Keon Coleman is on my bench. 0 targets. Yeah. You know what's funny? The guy doesn't leave the field, but he sees 0 potential opportunities. Again, they only threw the ball 19 times today, so 0 targets. It's not the worst thing in the world. I mean, it kind of is, but nonetheless, you are in a pretty tough spot there, Michael, to say the very least. You're probably in a position where you have to probably trade Puka and Waddle if, again, the information regarding, Tua is not going to be one that gives us confidence in his potential early return. We'd have to then at that point look at potential options of shipping both those guys in order to save your early season. Because yes, you can wait until both these guys get Puka returns from injury, Tua returns from injury, and once they do, great. But by the time you get there, you may be 0-5, 0-4. Which is definitely not a way to make the playoffs, especially if you play in a 12-team league. Only 6 teams make the playoffs. That'd be tough. JK sends in a question. Thank you, JK. Full PPR, Ayuk or London? I get Ayuk. Rest of season, I don't mind that. I don't have an issue with that. Just understand that, again, the next couple of weeks of Ayuk is going to be a little bit slow. I do have London still a little bit higher than Ayuk rest of season, but ultimately it's not a huge differential between the two of them to where I'm like saying, it's a terrible trade. I think they could very easily finish with similar value by the end of it all. So I don't have an issue with that. David sends in a question. Says, in a 10-team half PPR, do I start Keenan Allen or Terry McLaurin as my wide receiver 2? Most likely Keenan Allen. As it currently stands, it looks like Rome Odunze is not going to be playing this week. So that just opens up more opportunity for Keenan Allen to stay on the field in 12 personnel sets, which again, they ran a lot last week. They ran a lot of Gerald Everett and Cole Kmet on the field at the same time. So if they're going to use a lot of 2 tight end sets with 2 wide receivers within the overall formation, the absence of Rome Odunze just implies there are going to be more opportunities for Keenan Allen to run routes, get open, and of course, put up a pretty decent fantasy performance, assuming he himself is healthy, of course. C-Crypt sends in a question, says, I need 2 running backs and a flex and a full PPR scoring format. Very well. Connor, Adams, Jordan Mason, Mixon, and AK Alvin Kamara. Okay, so you've got a great bunch of running backs and potential options in this scenario. If it was my team, C-Crypt, I would start Mixon and I would start Alvin Kamara as my starting running backs, and then I would subsequently play Jordan Mason in the flex under the assumption, of course, that Christian McCaffrey does not play against Minnesota this week. If, in fact, Christian McCaffrey is playing in any sort of capacity, at that point, we would pivot to playing Adams in your flex. Thank you, C-Crypt. Appreciate it. Okay, let me go ahead and change the YouTube chat. Let's see if it breaks. It did not break. Wait, okay. YouTube may have fixed their overall live stream chat here. Okay, let's see here. Galactic123 sends in a super chat. Galactic, greatly appreciate that. Says, if Tua is out for a while, you think Jonnu Smith might have some value in a full PPR, hurting a tight end? Listen, I am the president of the Jonnu Smith fan club, but I cannot confidently say that anyone has consistent value with Skylar Thompson. Skylar Thompson sure was a rookie 2 years ago in those games that I'm referencing to, in which he wasn't able to help elevate the level of production for Tyreek Hill. But in those circumstances, again, I don't see how Skylar Thompson can improve enough over the course of the last 2 years to where I can trust him to at least maintain or even just have a slight downtick of value for all these options and still have them startable every single week. It's the same conversation that I'm having over the course of this entire week with myself in regards to Malik Willis. I don't trust that Malik Willis is going to be able to consistently get the ball to Christian Watson, Jaden Reed, Romeo Dobbs, Tucker Kraft to where they're going to be valuable options. So I start to just unfortunately rank them lower. Subsequently, then ranking Josh Jacobs lower because I don't expect them to be able to run the ball consistently if they're down so many points and in a scenario where they have to throw the ball. So again, in these scenarios, it is it's tough. It's tough. For Jonnu Smith, I mean, there's a chance. He looked great. They got him a lot of opportunity, which is beautiful. That's kind of what I was expecting in the preseason. That's why I went to bat for him. So we'll have to wait and see how that kind of turns out. But he'll definitely probably be in my waiver wire episode. You'll see his name come up a couple times from here on out. Infinity and Bijan sends in a question. Says CD and Najee Harris for Rashee Rice and Achane. Is that fair in full PPR? Do you want to trade for Achane right now? I mean, honestly, I don't. Ooh. Look, at this current circumstance, right? In this position, Infinity and Bijan, if Tua Tagovailoa comes back sooner rather than later, I'd rather have the Rashee Rice and Achane side of this deal. But again, that's in a full PPR and under that assumption. Outside of that, it's tough to really be able to predict as to what the heck is going on. Cinco2X says, I have Cleveland's defense, but want to pick up the Chargers this week. Very well. Let's see here. Drop who? Cleveland defense or one of these guys? Okay, so if I'm not mistaken, Cleveland's defense has really good matchups coming up. Let me just go ahead and cross-reference that. Yeah, so you don't want to drop the Cleveland defense. The Cleveland defense takes on the New York Giants in week 3, the Raiders in week 4, and the Washington Commanders in week 5. So in your position, you probably are not going to be dropping this defense because they could very easily lead you to victories in those upcoming weeks. If I was in your position, considering Charbonnet has value in the absence of Kenneth Walker, he hasn't practiced the last 2 days. The assumption would be that Cinco, you're probably in a position where you want to keep Charbonnet. I'd still probably want to keep Dowdle just to see what he's made of. And I would, even though Josh Palmer's a guy I've gone to bat for, in this scenario, you probably end up dropping him. Thank you. Damien sends in a question, says, full PPR, start Pickens or McLaurin? As it currently stands, I'm leaning towards playing McLaurin. Yeah, because of the Giants matchup, again, that secondary is in shambles. Additionally, Pickens now has to take on Patrick Surtain II, which I don't love the matchup at all. So I'd prefer McLaurin. Let's see here. Joel Garza sends in a question, but there wasn't anything attached, Joel. So let me see if I can find this. Says, yo, my guy Andrew, drop Chuba Hubbard for Javonte Williams in a full PPR. Sorry if that's a dumb question. I don't think it's a dumb question. But yes, I would definitely make that deal. Go pick up Javonte Williams. He's a starter. Chuba Hubbard will eventually be replaced in the return of Jonathan Brooks as that takes place. So thank you for the question, Joel Garza. Appreciate that. All right, we move on to the next question that comes along here. Let's see here. Where is it? Okay, Young Money follows up, says, do you remember me past few years? PPR? Young Money, I'm going to be honest. Listen, the smart answer for me would be to say, yeah, I remember you, but I honestly don't. I swear I do not. But there's a lot of names that come through here, right? There's 558 of you guys in here. So again, for those of you who are joining us on this Thursday night, yes, this was an unfortunate turn of events in regards to fantasy success. Kincaid was irrelevant, unfortunately, because, again, the Buffalo Bills didn't have to score. They scored defensively. They scored on the ground, and everything else was just, over very quickly for the Dolphins side of the ball. But I do appreciate you guys being here. Again, we're going to be answering questions for the next hour. If you guys have any questions, be sure to type it in the chat and include your scoring format. Additionally, if you guys haven't yet already, do me a favor and click the like button down below. Again, if you guys want my rankings sent from my email to yours every single Sunday morning for the remainder of the season, these rankings are by position, by tier, quarterback, running back, wide receiver, tight end, kicker, defense, and flex, half PPR, full PPR. Be sure to check out Underdog Fantasy. The link is down in the description. You use code Andrew, you make a first-time deposit minimum of $10, and you get those for the remainder of the season. No questions asked. You'll get those emails every single Sunday morning. Or if you've already gone ahead and used the code, mine, somebody else's in the past, you can also check out Patreon. Link is down in the description. Thank you for the support. Okay, so in this question that you have here, Young Money, PPR, Josh Jacobs or Rashee Rice? As of right now, if we're talking about this week, it's 100% Rashee Rice, and it's not even close, primarily because of that PPR scoring format and the absence of Jordan Love. Thank you, Young Money. And again, apologies for, you may have been around here for a while, but it doesn't pop up as a memorable name. I apologize. All right, let's see here. Pitch Herndon sends in a question. Says, went against Cook this week, but I had Achane LFG. Yeah, I mean, that's a great counterpunch to the uppercut that you unfortunately took in the form of James Cook. Crispy says, is Tyreek Hill an auto start in the absence of Tua? I don't know if he's an auto start. I think it depends on what kind of a league you play in. If you're playing in like an 8-team league, you might find better options, especially in a difficult matchup with Skylar Thompson at quarterback. So in this overall position, I would say it's very much so dependent on what other alternative options you have. But typically, you want to play him because he's such a talent. But the quarterback you just can't trust. Let's see here. Malibu 860 says, trade AJ Brown for Christian McCaffrey. Do you have Jordan Mason? If you do have Jordan Mason, it'd make me feel really, really comfortable doing so. Otherwise, there is risk involved inherently, but I'd be willing to make that trade. Like, if it kills my season, so be it. I'm willing to die on that. But then again, I play in way more leagues than you guys, so it may be a little bit different in terms of the risk consideration. Like, I'm not very much so risk averse. Like, I will go full speed into risk because I play in so many leagues. So, yeah. Thank you for the question, though. It's Kafka sends in a question, says, who round you put... Okay. A lot of autocorrection here from this message. I think you meant to say, what round do you put... No. Okay, I don't know what the beginning of this question is, Kafka. We're just going to read the back end and hope that we can figure it out via context clues. Flex, Flowers, or BTJ, and I just picked up Hollywood Brown. Okay, so I don't know what the first half of this question is. Regardless, if we're flexing Flowers or BTJ, I could understand the argument for playing BTJ, but I don't like the matchup specifically going up against that Cleveland secondary, so I'll just lean towards playing Zay Flowers this week. And then as for picking up Hollywood Brown, great. Pick him up, put him on your IR. All right, let's see here. Scrolling down, we had Lucas Russo 19. Thank you first and foremost for the super chat. I don't see a message, but let me go ahead and let me look in the chat and see if Lucas's question is in here. Lucas Russo says, guys, should I trade Debo and Pittman / Godwin for Tyreek Hill full PPR? Please respond. Wait. Okay, hold on, wait. Should I trade Debo and Pittman for Tyreek Hill? Right now, you shouldn't do any trades for Tyreek Hill until we get an actual confirmation as to what is going on with Tua Tagovailoa. Again, you gotta understand, as soon as he took contact there, his arm went flailing. And when you take enough brain damage, eventually the independent neurologist that is going to check Tua is going to be a little bit hesitant to let him go back on that field immediately next week. I understand they have 10 weeks before, between games, but I'm hoping he can clear concussion protocol. But if it takes him a couple weeks, yes, I'd like to have Tyreek Hill on my team, but again, until we get a confirmation, it's a little too certain to just jump out of trade to where you're trading for Tyreek Hill and giving up the caliber of Debo and Pittman. I wouldn't do that. Not at all. Burrow or Fields, boss? I'll take Fields this week. I don't have an issue with that, Tony. Let's see here. Edward Spray sends in a question. Thank you, Edward. Says, my wide receivers in a half PPR consist of Drake, Flowers, and Terry McLaurin. Okay. Flex, Ford, or Mason. Okay, so of the potential options you have, if I'm ranking them, Edward, it's probably Drake, number 1, Flowers, number 2, Terry McLaurin, number 3. You have Flex and Ford potentially available. You have Ford and Mason potentially available for your flex. If Christian McCaffrey plays, obviously you play Jerome Ford. If he does not, you play Jordan Mason in his absence. DeRozan says Kincaid and Waddle upside down happy face. Yeah, I can feel that energy. Trust me, it's rough. The turn of events of how this game transpired really did screw over fantasy, which again, it's the nature of the beast. Let's see here. Andre says, do you consider Dobbs wide receiver 1 of that team? No. Look, if we're going to just work it off of pure snap counts, there's a conversation to be had. But in terms of usage, definitely not yet. All right, let's see here. Erevan sends in a question. Says, lost Puka in a PPR. Should I make moves to replace him? My roster consists of Anthony Richardson, Rashee Rice, Devontae Adams, Breece Hall, Josh Jacobs, Stevenson, Mason, BTJ, Shaheed, Lazard, Irving, and Fields. Look, at this current moment, Ervin, I think you're in a really good spot to where you don't actually have to make any moves. So yeah, this is the way I see it. Considering Puka Nacua is on the injured reserve, and he will probably not return. Okay, so this is what I'm thinking, all right? And this is a very, safe projection. Okay, so let's say worst case scenario. overall. The Los Angeles Rams are trying to stay very safe with the potential of Puka Nacua. He wouldn't return until week 7, okay? And the reason why I say that is because they have a week 6 bye week. So even though he's going to be on the injured reserve and he's technically going to be out for the next 4 games, Arizona, San Francisco, Chicago, and Green Bay, he'd also miss week 6, which again is their bye week. So by the time you get to week 7, again, not a lot of bye weeks will have hit, so you'll be able to survive with your team, and then you'll get him back after 5 potential weeks of rest. So ultimately, I think you're fine keeping the roster as is. If you want to make moves, you certainly can, but I don't think your roster requires it. Again, Rice and Adams are your wide receivers, good to go. You got a top-tier quarterback. Hall, Jacob, Stevenson, and Mason are incredible. I don't know if you have a tight end on roster. Obviously, you didn't mention one. Maybe this is a league in which you don't have one and it's a double flex. That's possible. But otherwise, I don't think you need to make a move. Clarence O says, crazy start to the fantasy season, Andrew. I mean, yeah, every season's crazy. Every season's crazy. It's just a matter of how do we adapt to it accordingly. That's really going to be it. And again, a lot of it's going to be luck. It's a variable that just takes place. There are things that happen that are out of our control. And, regardless of what we do, regardless of what we project, it could go the complete opposite direction and it could screw us over. And again, it's all about potentially adapting to these overall circumstances that we are in. Okay, let's see here. Scrolling down after Clarence. Again, thank you, Clarence. Julian. We're just going to call you Julian. Says, have Brees want his handcuff. Okay, very well. Given all the injuries, who should I drop? Okay, let's see here. You have Michael Wilson. You have Darnell Mooney. You have Baker Mayfield. Already have Kyler. So as it currently stands, if it's me, I'm keeping Baker Mayfield because, again, all these injuries. And Baker has value to where maybe eventually if another quarterback injury takes place, you could trade him. Understand, again, the last 2 seasons of the National Football League have consisted of the most unique starting quarterbacks in NFL history within singular seasons. So keep Baker. Between Michael Wilson Jr. and Darnell Mooney, I personally have Darnell Mooney ranked higher going forward. I know that Michael Wilson was able to score that early touchdown within week 1, but ultimately I think Mooney's going to have more value rest of season. So that's the direction I'm leaning in, dropping Michael Wilson. If you want to drop Mooney, that's fine, but for sure keep Baker. Thank you. Caleb Graves says, need upside after the Tyreek performance, Demarcus Robinson or Alec Pierce or Ladd McConkey. If you're looking for... this is the thing, right? Okay, so in my mind, it's between Demarcus Robinson and Ladd McConkey. Alec Pierce, again, is going to be a deep ball receiving threat, very similar to a guy like Rashid Shaheed, to where in certain weeks can make a singular performance out of one play. You could try to go for that. I think that's too much of a gamble based on just the fact that it's not going to be a weekly occurrence. And now that teams realize, hey, this team wants to go for deep ball, potential threats throughout the entirety, they're just going to sit in the cover 2 the entire game, cover 3, and make sure that they can't ever get over the top of that defense. So in this circumstance, I'm thinking potential high upside. It's probably Demarcus Robinson and hoping he scores. But Ladd McConkey definitely looks like a potential sweet option there because of the Carolina Panthers' terrible defense. But yeah, I'd probably lean towards Demarcus Robinson as that high upside play that I'd go with. CGV says, best handcuff, Corum, Bigsby, Irving, or Jalen Wright. Look, Jeff Wilson Jr. left this game early. Now, I don't know if it was because of the fact that they were getting blown out and they wanted to let him leave, or if he was actually injured. But Jalen Wright could have value going forward. Again, if we're going to have, injured Raheem Mostert, injured potential Jeff Wilson Jr. But even then, again, without Tua, really this offense is going to be, with one hand tied behind their back per se. But in terms of the most valuable handcuff of the group, it's probably Bigsby as of right now, because he could still have individual primary value even without an injury to Travis Etienne. Jay sends in a question, says, Montgomery, Stevenson, Ford, start 2 in a full PPR. Very well. If I'm starting 2 of these in a full PPR, I feel very confident starting Stevenson and Ford because of their PPR upside in comparison to Montgomery. Montgomery is very much so touchdown dependent, but like I mentioned on Tuesday's episode, he has scored 16 touchdowns in the last 17 games he has played in this offense, healthy. So he's more often than not going to accompany his performance with a touchdown, but because of that PPR upside, I feel very confident starting Stevenson and Ford in this given week, Jay. Thank you. All right, let's see here. Let's scroll back up a little bit. Juan Vaca Ramirez sends in a question. Juan, hope you're doing well. Says, trade Terry and Brian Thomas Jr. for Olave and Ridley. I don't have an issue with that. That works for me. I think going forward, again, Will Levis is going to have to make some huge strides in terms of improvement. But Olave is the most valuable piece in this overall circumstance, and I would like to get that piece on my team if I can for the options of sending Terry McLaurin and BTJ for it. Thank you. Let's see. Your 7th season sends in a question. Says, start both Worthy and Rice in a full PPR. I don't have an issue with that. That's fine by me. Again, it depends on what the alternative options are, but the idea of starting 2 Kansas City Chiefs do not scare me. Now, if you get to like, hey, I want to start 4 Kansas City Chiefs. I have Mahomes, Pacheco, Worthy, and Rice. Then at that point, I'd say maybe we're dipping too much into one singular team, and we've got a lot of risk for our roster, especially when if an injury takes place or when the bye weeks start to hit. But in this circumstance, I don't have an issue starting both of them this week. I think they're great plays, especially considering Marquise Hollywood Brown has not practiced yet, and it seems like he's probably going to be in a situation in which he does not play in this given game. Joel Garza has a follow-up question, says, why wasn't Jaden Reed on your wide receiver video? Him or Ford in a full PPR? I'd honestly play Jerome Ford. The reason why Jaden Reed wasn't there is because, yes, he had an incredible week 1, but Jordan Love's not playing quarterback in week 2. And as long as Malik Willis is going to be the starting quarterback, I have very little hope that these wide receivers can accompany a performance with upside. Now, if in fact they want to prove me wrong, I have no issue with that. I'd love to see these players improve and have themselves great performances despite the lack of talent at the quarterback position for the Green Bay Packers this week. But the fact of the matter is, oftentimes than not, when you get that backup quarterback in, like we saw earlier today, it doesn't lead to high upside performances because, quite frankly, the vast majority of the National Football League barely doesn't have a good starting quarterback, much less a good backup quarterback. Just look around the league. When we have guys like Daniel Jones still starting in this whole scheme, it gives you an understanding that, yes, there are not 32 incredible quarterbacks in the in the world to play in the National Football League. I was going to say in the United States, which kind of makes sense anyway, but we don't have enough good quarterbacks in the league. Week 1 statistics pretty much kind of validate that. I mean, I mentioned it earlier today in the quarterback/tight end rankings video, and I want to go ahead and repeat these stats for those of you who didn't hear it. Again, for those of you who are joining us, welcome. Hope you guys are doing well. Please do me a favor, click the like button down below to get us over 100. That'd be greatly appreciated. But at the beginning of today's video, I specifically mentioned the following stats. Week 1 overall production at the quarterback position. The worst passing yard per game average since 1992, the fewest passing attempts since 1992, the worst yard per attempt average since 2003, the lowest touchdown rate since 1993, and the highest sack rate since 1997. Week 1 is a shambles because the quarterback position is just, it's not great. They're not playing well. There are not good enough quarterbacks in the league. And that's why every year we end up seeing a lot of draft picks obviously getting picked up. So in this circumstance, I don't trust Malik Willis, and that is why he wasn't, Jaden Reed wasn't included within the video. I'll take Jerome Ford this week. Thank you. Roy Shaver. Roy says, drop Ridley or Palmer and put Hollywood Brown. If you don't have an IR spot, I probably don't make that move. The only way I would end up doing so is if I have that IR spot. Aiden Johnson sends in a question. Says, PPR, start 2 out of the potential 4. Rice, Walker, Pacheco, Jacobs. As it currently stands, okay, under the assumption that the trend continues of Kenneth Walker not practicing once again tomorrow, which again, we'll know by tomorrow. If in fact that does take place, it would lead me to saying that your starts are Rice and Pacheco, and you can confidently start them both. Even if Kenneth Walker is active and potentially available, I still may be hesitant in comparison to playing him over the other two. So as of right now, Aiden, I think it's probably going to be Rice and Pacheco for this week. Full systems go. Thank you. All right, let's see here. After Aiden's question, we had Virtua Tag, who says, 12-team half PPR. Do I drop Marshawn Lloyd, Jalen Wright, or Romeo Doubs? Waiver has Bigsby, Ty Chandler, Alexander Madison, Strong, Joshua Palmer. I have Christian McCaffrey, Jordan Mason, Najee Harris, Algier, CeeDee Lamb, T. Higgins, Rice, and Brian Thomas Jr. Okay, so of the available options you have, I think it would probably be in your best interest to swap out Marshawn Lloyd for Tank Bigsby. Additionally, I also feel relatively confident in the idea of swapping Dobbs out for Palmer as it currently stands. Thank you for your question. Otherwise, I'm keeping Jalen Wright just in case, just to see what these injuries are for the Miami Dolphins backfield. Glory sends in a question. Says, got offered Burrow/Olave for Kyler and Devontae Smith. Huge Burrow fan, full PPR. Burrow, Cook, Rashad, Amon-Ra, Jamar, Kincaid, Olave. But Olave feels boom or bust. Okay, so in your scenario here, regardless of what your team looks like, it's just a quarterback and wide receiver combo for one another. In this current circumstance, I'm probably leaning towards the Kyler side. Glory. Now, if that Burrow fandom that you have, considering you said big Burrow fan, if that fandom is strong enough to where you're like, hey, listen, every week I want to sit down and I want to root for the Bengals and I want to root for Burrow and I want him to be on my fantasy team. So be it. That's fine. I don't think that there's a major difference, but again, understand Burrow's going to start slow. And Devontae, I'm telling you guys, I said it in the preseason. They moved him to the slot. He played 70% of his snaps there. He is going to start destroying teams soon enough. Just wait till the touchdowns start to flow in here soon enough. But yeah, I would prefer the Devontae Smith-Kyler side, but that's just my personal opinion. Otherwise, if you like the Burrow Olave, I don't have an issue with it. I think it's relatively close in terms of value. Abraham sends in a question. Thank you, Abraham. And again, thank you, Lori, for the super chat. Abraham says, flex Brandon Cooks or Jerome Ford at a full PPR. I will take Jerome Ford there happily. Thank you. Let's see your pitch. Sends in a follow-up question. Says PPR flex 2, Montgomery, Dobbins, Worthy, Reed. Thanks. Out of these potential options, okay, I probably end up leaning towards the safety of playing Montgomery and Dobbins in this scenario. Pitch. Thank you for the question. That's kind of where I'm leaning towards. Nathan Lusk in the live chat was saying, question, should I replace Ladd McConkey with Scary Terry? I don't think you have to. As of right now, I barely prefer it, but I do prefer Terry McLaurin because of that matchup, specifically against the secondary of the New York Giants, which again is not great at all. Any advice to a Tyreek Hill manager, says SM in the chat. Yeah, as of right now, we need time to get an idea as to what exactly we're looking at. If we're looking down the barrel of, unfortunately, Tua missing an extended period of time, then there could be a conversation had in the future in regards to breaking off Tyreek and trading it to a team that can afford to wait for the return of Tua Tagovailoa. But until then, we have to just stand pat as it currently stands and not do anything totally crazy. Nathan Gutierrez says, 2-year subbed. In the Superflex League, my quarterbacks are Stroud and Jalen Hurts. Wide receivers are Harrison Jr., Ridley, Moore, Higgins, Demarcus Robinson. Running backs consist of Alvin Kamara, Najee Harris, Nick Chubb, Swift. Tight ends are Andrews, Freiermuth. Who should I start? Should I trade for a tight end or a wide receiver? Look, as it currently stands, the starting lineup obviously goes as such. Mark Andrews at tight end. You have a super flex league, therefore Hurts and Stroud are both playing. Harrison plays a wide receiver. Next to Harrison is DJ Moore. As for your running backs, it's Alvin Kamara and Najee Harris this week. And for your flex, out of the available potential options, I'd probably end up playing Demarcus Robinson there, Nathan. As for potentially trading, should I trade for a tight end? Give Mark Andrews another couple weeks here, and hopefully let Freiermuth find value to maybe you can end up trading him for value, because I'd like you to get potentially another running back here, potentially upgraded, because until then, Nick Chubb won't be back for a little while. Thank you for the question, Nathan, and of course, the continued support. Scrolling down, we had ORNG, who says, I traded Higgins for Richardson. Thoughts? I don't have an issue with that. Again, if you can survive that and you have enough wide receiver depth to where you can make a trade like that and get a huge quarterback upgrade, I have no issue with it at all, especially considering it is a hamstring injury. Likelihood is, based on what I'm anticipating, and the nature of the injury taking place in week 1 and him not playing, I don't think that T. Higgins plays until week 4. So I don't have an issue with that right now. I think it's a solid trade for a huge quarterback upgrade. Caleb Graves says, Lamar, Montgomery, Rashad White, Hill, Garrett Wilson, Laporta, McConkey versus Aaron, what is this? AR is Anthony Richardson, Henry Mixon, Amon St. Brown, Pittman, Pitts, and DK Metcalf. Am I done with Hill's 6 points tonight? Listen, okay. If you just show me two teams and you say, Andrew, who's going to win? I don't think I can objectively tell you one way or the other who's going to win, because who's to say that the players on the opposite team aren't going to get injured? But that being said, considering Hill typically is supposed to be 20 points per game for your team, unless somebody else steps up with a high volume of touchdowns, which I mean somebody else, I mean quite literally everyone else on your team, Lamar, Montgomery, Rashad White, Garrett Wilson, Laporta, McConkey, all have to find the end zone. If they don't find the end zone, each of them individually one piece minimum, you probably end up losing this week, yes. But we hold out hope, and that's why we play the game. If we knew what the outcome was going to be, we wouldn't play the games, right? We would just crown the Kansas City Chiefs champions 3 times in a row and keep it moving. But we play the game for a reason, right? Thank you. Juice Vino sends it a question. Says, hi, Andrew. In a full PPR, should I start Rashad White or Brandon Ayuk? As it currently stands, I'm pretty comfortable going with Rashad White there. He's going to get himself a high volume of usage within the passing game because it's probably going to be in a negative game script. And even last week, not in a negative game script, saw himself a lot of opportunity in that circumstance. As long as he is seeing that kind of a high volume of potential targets, receptions, etc., in a full PPR, it makes him a better play as of right now instead of Brandon Ayuk because, again, Brandon Ayuk is still trying to find his footing and find a full pace within this offense. No training camp, no experience in that regard. They're still trying to ramp him up to the Brandon Ayuk that we know and love. So just give him a little bit of time. I think Rashad White's for sure the play this week. Scrolling back up, Everin sends in a question, says, my other PPR league, I think I need to fix running back depth. I have Chuba Hubbard, Zamir White, and McLaughlin. Yes, you absolutely need to fix that. Trade bait. I have Bijan Robinson, Josh Jacobs, Pittman Jr., Garrett Wilson, Kupp, Anthony Richardson, and McBride. Wait, I'm so confused. Okay, so So when you say you need to fix your depth, I see it completely differently. Everin, when you say you need to fix your depth, like you have Bijan and Jacobs. So ultimately, until you hit bye weeks, which again won't be until, what is it? First bye week is week 6, if I'm not mistaken. Let's see, NFL week 5. Any teams have a bye week in week 5? Oh, there is 5. There's 4 teams on bye week 5. Holy crap. Lions, Chargers, Eagles, and Titans. Is that really? It starts in week 5 now? Maybe I'm just forgetful. And in week 6, there's another 4 teams on bye. Chiefs, Rams, Dolphins, Vikings. Jeez Louise. Considering the Dolphins have a bye week in week 6, don't be surprised if Tua doesn't come back till week 7, by the way. Now that I'm looking at that. So, anyway, back to the topic on hand. In terms of your team, you have Bijan and Jacobs. There really isn't a concern as to who your starters are. Pittman Jr., Garrett Wilson, Kupp, McBride, Anthony Richardson. You have studs across the board with your starters. Now, if you're trying to improve upon your flex potential options, you really can't. I don't want you to trade away Kupp unless you're going to get a wide receiver back in return and an improvement at running back. So ultimately, I want to leave your starting lineup as is because they're set and they're ready to go and they're great players across the board. And I just wait until Zamir White has himself an upside week, and then I'm shipping him immediately after. But if you really want to break somebody off of the available options you have, I'm waiting for Michael Pittman Jr. to have a big week, then I'm shipping him. Thank you for your question. JB sends in a question, says, in a 12-man full PPR, I was offered Olave and Dobbins for Flowers and Montgomery. What are your thoughts? Listen, here's the thing. Dobbins, yes, he had a great week 1. But the fact of the matter is that Dobbins is still, in my mind, not more valuable than Montgomery rest of season. The offenses that are associated with, the volume of touches that we know that Montgomery is going to get, I think he's so much so ahead of Dobbins in this circumstance that I'd rather just keep the Montgomery side. I think in terms of context of what your team ends up being, that may shift my thought process on the matter. But as of right now, I probably lean towards the Montgomery side of this deal, JB. Chris Owen sends in a question, says, for the flex for week 2, I can't decide between DJ Moore and Najee Harris. I think regardless of, not regardless of scoring format, because in a full PPR, DJ Moore definitely has the advantage. Najee Harris really isn't a highly utilized receiving back, especially with Jaylen Warren and Cordell Patterson at the disposal of this team. And quite frankly, considering Justin Fields is the quarterback, there's a higher likelihood of rushing attempts in the form of Justin Fields scrambling rather than dumping it off to the running backs of this offense. So everybody gets hurt in that overall category. But as it currently stands, if you're playing in a half PPR potentially here, I think Najee Harris is a solid play, especially the way he looked last week. Obviously, 20 rushing attempts only leading to 80 yards isn't the greatest number, but when you have a far more advantageous matchup this week, taking on the Denver Broncos run stop defense, which in my mind, whether it was last season, whether it's this season, again, isn't a great run stop defense. I'd lean in that direction. I'm okay playing Najee in a half PPR. DJ Moore, in the absence of Rome Odunze, is a solid full PPR play on the other side of that coin. All right, Jacob Barney sends in a question. Thank you, Jacob. Says, I just had Achane tonight. Who would you flex this week between DK or Montgomery? Rest of my lineup consists of Gibbs, Jamar, Devontae Smith in a half PPR. Thanks, Andrew. I think purely just off of scoring format, I'm leaning towards playing David Montgomery. And then additionally, with the context of the fact that you have Jahmyr Gibbs, I think that makes it just that much more powerful. I've mentioned this in the past. If you have Gibbs and Montgomery on the same team, your best position typically every week is to start them both in order to ensure you gain all of the value of this backfield. And based on what we saw last week and what we'll continue, last week, last season, and what we'll continue to see for the remainder of the season is that they've got a lot of potential value, just baseline floor every single week, and starting them both is very safe in doing so. So yeah, I'll lean in the direction of playing Montgomery there. I don't have an issue with that at all. Thank you for the question. Appreciate it. After Jacob, we have Michael. Thank you, Michael. Says, get Hill and Achane for patch in London. Okay, let's see here. So if you're going to be sending away Pacheco in London and you're going to bring back Hill and Achane, I would say yes, but that's under the, let's do it. You want to talk about risk? I would take that. Like, give me Hill and Achane. If Tua Tagovailoa is out for the rest of the season because of this injury, because again, he's got a pretty big history of concussions, then, we're biting the bullet, Michael. But you and I, in the pocket, I would take the risk of that because you're getting so much value potentially back, especially if Tua returns in like 2 weeks. Sheesh. I mean, you're in a good spot at that point. So yeah, I don't have an issue with it. I'm willing to take the risk with you. Dan sends in a question, says full PPR, top 5 buy low running back. Times are tough. Okay, let's go look at the running backs right now. Let's just go look at the objective list of running backs and let's see what we have potentially in line for a quote unquote buy low prospect. Now, buy low, does that include running backs that already inherently have a lot of value preseason? Like, just because someone, just throwing out a name, like Josh Jacobs didn't play well in week 1 in terms of fantasy production. Sure, in terms of IRL production, like in real life game, he looked great. But in terms of fantasy production, he wasn't the greatest running back, obviously, in week 1 with, 100 total yards, but, didn't break any banks. It wasn't Saquon, right? So if there's an idea or a potential in which you can go after players that are highly valued from, the preseason, we drafted them in the first couple rounds, such as Josh Jacobs, Travis Etienne, I'd like to go after those kind of running backs. Now, if in fact you believe that, or, Derrick Henry, but if in fact you do believe that there is going to be a potential paywall that is going to prevent you from potentially getting those guys into trade because they are so highly valued, because they were early round selections, the only other options that I can think of in terms of quote unquote buy low prospects at this current moment in time based on week 1's production, let's see, across the board, it's tough because like all the RB2s had solid games and all the RB1s kind of floundered in week 1. I'm looking across this board and there's nothing that I look at and I'm like, yeah, I'm super excited about, like, so I look at DeAndre Swift and I think, all right, 5 points in week 1, 10 carries, 30 yards, 1 target, 0 receptions. Can we buy Omega low on Swift? Yes. Will it lead to ultimate success? Who effing knows? But the buy low could be so cheap considering he only put up 5 points that it could be worth the risk inherently, baked into the value. So that's a potential name I'm throwing out there. As for further names, let's see. Who is another potential? I mean, like, getting 20 carries for Najee Harris is kind of no joke. I know he only had 70 yards. He averaged 3.5 yards per carry. Yuck, that is pretty bad. Never mind. Skipping that one. I thought it was 80 yards. I thought he was averaging at least 4 per carry, but that wasn't the case. Taking on Atlanta is difficult, though. They got a pretty good run-stopping defense, nonetheless. Outside of that, I mean, that's it. Again, if you can buy low on studs like Kyron, Jonathan Taylor, Etienne, Henry, who didn't play well in week 1, Jacobs, fantastic. Otherwise, the pivot is probably DeAndre Swift because he's probably the next best back that didn't have a great week that you could potentially still get for very low value. Rogo says, got Kincaid / Colby. Thinking of a scheme. Let's see here. Wait till 12 a.m. waivers. Pick up / drop every tight end so opponent can't drop. Hasn't picked up yet. He has Ferguson. What do you think? I mean, again, if you play in a league where you can do that and you can prevent people from picking up tight ends because they got dropped, I think you play in a really shitty league setting. No offense. If you're the commissioner, just fix it. I think that's such a bogus way to play. But hey, if you could take advantage and exploit the system, go for it. Why not? Kevin Smith sends in a question, says, sup, in a full PPR, I need 2. Adams, Montgomery, Olave, and Likely. Out of the group in a full PPR scoring format, I'm probably leaning towards playing Adams and Olave there. Thank you for the question. Ali sends in a question, says, drop Chase Brown for Tank Bigsby, McLaughlin, or Dowdle. I'd be willing to, honestly, if you're playing in a full PPR, I'd be willing to drop him for Chase McLaughlin. Outside of that, I'd keep him over the rest. Thank you for the question. JB sends in a follow-up question. JB says, per my last question, I think the gap between Zay and Olave /volume/receptions outweighs the potential gap between Montgomery and Dobbins. Yeah, I mean, look, if you believe that to be the case, make the trade. The only issue that I have with Dobbins is injury risk and history. ACL, Achilles, it wouldn't surprise me if something else hit this guy. Unfortunately, I'm not hoping it does. I'm just thinking if there's a risk implied already there, it's really high. And you're taking a very big risk on that because I'd rather just have the safety of the players that I know their production line are going to look like rather than someone that is on the opposite side of this that could end up, unfortunately, getting injured over time because that's just what his career has been year over year, unfortunately. So that's kind of the risk that I'm not willing to mess around with as of this current moment in time. That's why I lean the opposite direction there. But if you'd like to take it, take it. Because I won't deny, yes, Olave is significantly better than Zay rest of season. All right, so I've caught up respectively. I believe we're good to go there. Let me just go ahead and open this up just to make sure. If you guys haven't yet already, do me a favor. Click the like button down below. Continue to support the help, continue to help support the channel. Sometimes I talk too fast for my, not for my own good, but rather my demise in these scenarios. So I apologize if I speak too fast. But, with so many thoughts that are just flowing through my brain, when you throw 17 players at me in all the different aspects of potential, the brain starts to go to overdrive and starts to steam. That's why I start to sweat so much, because it's really me working into overdrive. Anyway, let's answer some of these questions. Continuing on, again, for those of you who are joining us, thank you. Hope you guys are doing well. Mario says, is it time to buy Tyreek Hill low? Again, until we know further regarding the concussion, the protocol, and all that kind of jazz, I'm willing to take that risk, but understand that the risk could end up killing you in terms of your fantasy value. Not, Anyway, Jason Rodriguez sends in a question. Thank you, Jason. Says, Tua owner here. I grabbed Geno Smith, offering Geno for Herbert and A.D. Mitchell. Should I just grab Russell Wilson, Levis, Fields, Darnold, Levis off the free agent and drop Geno? As of right now, I don't have an issue with Geno. I think his upcoming matchups are better than what he has to face this week. Let me check here. Because if you're a Tua Tagovailoa manager, I'm assuming you started him. So looking at the upcoming matchups for the Seattle Seahawks, specifically the next three, I really like them for Geno. Dolphins next week, the week after that, the Lions, and the week after that, the Giants. I think they're all great in terms of potential matchups for him and his potential value for fantasy. So in this circumstance, I have no issue with him. If you were going to make a swap from Geno to somebody else, if Tua is on the IR in future weeks, you might want to hold Geno and then also add Fields to the overall conversation as your second string quarterback going forward to play matchups after week 5 and going on and seeing whatever kind of comes of it. Let's see here. We're moving on. Drop Irving for Charbonnet? Yeah, I would do so. Yes, I would. Ever and I would. Because primarily, if I'm not mistaken, let me go check the injury report once again for the Seahawks. I looked at it earlier today and it wasn't updated because obviously they're a West Coast team, so it takes a little while for them to update it. But yeah, Kenneth Walker, 2 days in a row, not practicing. That does not bode well for his potential. Again, it's not I wasn't practicing, or I didn't practice because I'm resting and I'm a veteran and I'm giving that the veteran designation. It's purely because of the injury. So picking up Charbonnet could give you a great potential flex start this given week, especially as they take on the New England Patriots. Charbonnet last season, let me go and check his stats in the weeks in which he played without Kenneth Walker. Obviously different offense, different scheme, all this kind of jazz, but I'm curious for my own purposes and then share that information with you guys while we're at it. So if I go to Charbonnet and I go to 2023 regular season, let's go and check what were the games in which in 2023 Kenneth Walker missed. I'm just going to do a little bit of research here and get the answer. So Zach Charbonnet missed week 11, 12, and 13. Week 11 played 7 snaps before leaving the game. So I'm going to count that as pretty much missing that game. So week 11, 12, 13. Let's see what Charbonnet did in his absence. Week 11, 12, 13, 9.9. And this is half PPR. 9.9, 7.8, 16.4. In those 3 matchups, the first one was against the LA Rams. Second one was against San Francisco 49ers, which was a tough one. And that was on Thanksgiving Day. You guys remember that matchup was not a close game at all. And then the last one was against the Dallas Cowboys, in which he had 19 carries, 1 reception, 20 total touches, and scored a touchdown. So again, a pretty solid, flexible options there. If in fact Charbonnet does trend in the, in the wrong direction and unfortunately missed this week. All right. JB says, thank you. What about Connor Olave for Monteze? I'd feel way better about that. Yeah, I'd feel way better about that. Especially if you have an opportunity to, yeah, I'd feel better about that. That one's better in my mind. Thank you, JB. I'd probably take that in that circumstance. Especially if you can somehow get Trey Benson off somebody, or potentially he's, available on the waivers because he didn't do anything in week 1. And as time will progress, even if you can't get Trey Benson right now, assume that he'll probably be dropped in your league, especially once injuries and bye weeks hit, and then that way you'll be able to scoop him up. Benny G sends in a question. Says, good day from down under, Andrew. In a full PPR, pick one: McConkey, Neighbors, or Harrison. You got 3 great rookie options there. I'll tell you, if I could, I'd start them all. Between the 3 of them, under the assumption that Neighbors is healthy and ready to go, I know that he did pop up on the injury report earlier today at a limited fashion. Let me go ahead and cross-reference this really quickly. Pulling up the Giants. Yeah, so as it currently stands, he was limited in today's practice, Thursday, September 9th, with a knee injury, quote-unquote knee injury. If, in fact, we're in a situation in which he does end up playing, he's the starter out of those 3. Additionally, Darius Slayton is in the concussion protocol. He may not play this week, which does give him potentially more opportunities in the direction of Malik Neighbors. Additionally, against a secondary that is in shambles. Not only is the secondary for the Commanders, as it currently sits, terrible, but they also lost one of their cornerbacks with a season-ending injury. So it keeps getting better for teams going up against the Washington Commanders. As for your follow-up question there, Benny, would you trade Garrett Wilson for Evans or A.J. Brown? I would trade him for A.J. Brown. I don't have an issue with that at all. Thank you. Abdullah M says, in a 12-man PPR league, who should I start? My wide receiver line is Jaden Reed, Marvin Harrison Jr., Alan Lazard, Wan'Dale Robinson, Puka Nacua was lost due to injury. My wide receivers are shaky. Okay, I understand. As it currently stands, if I'm starting 2 of these options, it's probably Marvin Harrison, number 1. And in a full PPR, it's probably Wan'Dale Robinson, number 2. It might be dumb not to start Jaden Reed, but that's just the way that I function. I don't trust these backup quarterbacks with our potential starting wide receivers. So in this circumstance, I probably end up playing, I probably play Wan'Dale Robinson next to Marvin Harrison this week. Thank you for the question, Abdullah. Noah sends in a question, says the following: Worthy/Ford for Puka/Moss. Risky, long-term team. Yeah, I don't have an issue with that. Again, when you're playing the long-term game, you're trading away Ford, which again, eventually we will see the return of Nick Chubb. And once that does, they'll get a little bit of a backfield split, but that's a long time from now. But if you're playing the long con and you want to try to get Puka so that for the, once Puka returns, you can have a better team overall and you have Moss. I don't have an issue with this trade, but understand the inherent risk. The inherent risk is Puka returns, gets injured again, and then it's over, as in your season. So there's always the potential there. Understand that. Okay. Traded London and Charbonnet for JT. I don't have an issue with that, Joshua. I think that's a great trade overall. Aaron Castillo says, thoughts on Mark Andrews' upside? Can he get us production like in years past? I think it'll be definitely more difficult for him to get production in comparison to what he did in years past. But, I mean, the difficulty is always going to be up there. It's just a matter of, is the target competition in the red zone going to be too much? Because that's really what Mark Andrews, his value is based on. If he scores touchdowns, he is a valuable fantasy prospect, period, done, end of conversation. So if he can continue to find himself relevance within the red zone, then we have no issue with him and he's going to be great. If he can't, and Zay Flowers, Derrick Henry, and Isaiah Likely are going to siphon his red zone upside, then in that situation going forward, we're going to be in a little bit of trouble. Joshua in the chat says, hey, Andrew, I need a flex for this week, half PPR, Devontae Smith or Rachaad White. In a half PPR scoring format, I'm leaning towards playing Rachaad White there. Thank you for the question. Everyone says, one more, LOL. Drop Sutton for Wan'Dale Robinson in a PPR. I probably wouldn't, primarily because Cortland Sutton is the number 1 of his team. Additionally, as the weeks progress, Bo Nix will get better and better. Bo Nix, I think, may be already better than Daniel Jones as it currently stands. So with Bo Nix getting better, it'll allow for Cortland Sutton's baseline of production to be that much higher on top of the already high target opportunity that he was getting within the offense. What was it? 12 targets out of 42 potential attempts. What's the math on that? almost 29% target share is an incredible share of opportunity. Rome Odunze prospect this season. If he's injured, not good start. Not a good start, especially considering there's so much target competition within the offense already. Not a good start. Let's see here. Scrolling down, we took care of Noah. Thank you again, guys, for sending in those super chats. Greatly appreciate the support in that regard. Again, guys, if you guys want to get your questions answered on a daily basis at an unlimited rate, you can also check out the Patreon. It's $19.99 a month. Every month, you'll obviously get access to rankings every Thursday and Sunday. You'll additionally get access to the private Discord server. On Tuesdays, we end up having waiver wire conversations there. We did one this Tuesday for about an hour plus after the live stream. And then additionally, you'll also get to ask me any and all questions. So you don't have to wait for me to live stream. You don't have to send in a super chat. You can ask me then and there and get everything ready to go in regards to trades, waiver wires, etc. So if you guys are interested, there's a link down in the description to support via Patreon if that's something that you're interested in. If not, no problem, no pressure at all. Thank you. All right, let's see here. JT sends in a question, says start 2. In a half PPR scoring format, we have Josh Jacobs, we have Kenneth Walker, we have DJ Moore. In a half PPR, you may be forced to start DJ Moore and Josh Jacobs in the absence of Kenneth Walker. Again, like I mentioned earlier, JT, we don't have a final say as to whether or not he's going to play because, again, he has been dealing with this oblique injury, the abdomen injury per se. He missed the last 2 days of practice, and if, in fact, we once again miss practice on Friday, the likelihood is he's probably going to miss, and Zach Charbonnet will step in. If you have Zach Charbonnet, I could probably make a conversation, or I could make a argument to play Josh Jacobs and Charbonnet. If you don't have the potential backup and somebody else has it in your league, it's Josh Jacobs and DJ Moore. If, in fact, Kenneth Walker does play both the running backs. Thank you. James Romo in the chat says, love the channel. In a half PPR, I have Cooks, Myers, Palmer, Deontay. Do I drop any of them for Demarcus Robinson? I think Myers is going to be solid this week. So will Cooks, Palmer, and Deontay are the kind of toss-ups that I kind of want to give another week of potential to, just to see if they're capable of anything. They play against each other on top of it. So for right now, I want to give them another week of potential because, again, Demarcus Robinson serves as a short-term answer to a wide receiver need, especially if, again, we're waiting for Puka Nacua to return, and that'll happen in week 7. So in this overall circumstance, I'm probably saying let's keep what you have. Let's see what they're capable of. And if, in fact, they don't pan out, then we can kind of move on from them in future weeks. But let's give them another shot here. What would you give up for Jamar Chase, says Colby? Colby, that's such an open, broad question that it's too difficult to answer. You might as well go to a trade calculator because just asking me what I would give for Jamar Chase, it depends what you have, what you need, and your scoring format, how many teams. There's so many variables that go into a potential option like that it's just too broad of a question. I apologize for not being able to answer. I can't. Jersey South says, okay, I don't know what that means. Okay. Cash Kid Cardi. Cash Kid, hope you're doing well. Says standard, Kamara or Dobbins. In a standard scoring format where you're getting 0 points per reception, I think I'm playing Dobbins this week. Pretty comfortably, in fact, considering he plays against the Carolina Panthers. I think a lot of Kamara's overall value this week is going to be PPR receptions. If you're not able to potentially garner any of those upside points, then, unfortunately, we're in a situation where you have to play Dobbins. It's not to say that Kamara can't find value in the absence of reception points, but I think it's really going to be valuable, especially if he's not able to find the end zone. All right, scrolling down from Catch Cardi, who said we have a question from Garrett. Garrett sends in a question and says, picked up Isaiah Likely off of the waivers to trade him. Okay, very well. I have Puka Nacua, T. Higgins, Ridley, Sutton, Lazard. My wide receivers are an L right now. God offered Jamison Williams for him. What's your opinion on that matter? Okay, so here's the thing. What is your current tight end, and what are you... So, you're trading away Likely, but who do you have on roster to where you're comfortably trading him away? If you have one of the top options, for example, Laporta, McBride, Kelsey, and you're comfortable and you're not going to pivot, that's fine. We can make a move of this capacity. Trading for Jamison Williams, though, considering the wide receivers that you have on roster, I'm willing to take the risk. Again, you have so many injuries with Puka and Higgins out. You need some sort of influx of production, and I don't mind taking the risk there and the potential trade opportunity of getting Jamison. But again, that's under the assumption that you already have an established tight end and don't have, some hullabaloo going on there. Some mumbo jumbo. Elite Scrub sends in a question, says, okay, with how bad Tua looked, trying to trade Tyreek Hill for Nico, question mark. I won't. Personally, I won't be able to stomach that, personally. If you'd like to, go for it. Best of luck, and let's hope for the best. But until I get more information, I'm not moving my Tyreek Hill shares. Garrett Poe follows up and says, I have Laporta. Meant to say that, my bad. Okay, cool. So then if you have Laporta, trading for another Lions wide receiver, no, I don't mind that. Let's go for it. Let's give it a shot. Because this is the highest value that you're ever going to have on Likely. I don't think he'll have a better week this season. If he does, I mean, goodness gracious, that's incredible for us. But I think you're pretty much finding pretty good value in the move. National champion Rush says, should I trade JJ for Marvin Harrison Jr. and DeAndre Swift? Absolutely not. No shot. I would never in a million years. You'd have to literally move Sam Darnold off that team and make the starting quarterback Ben DiNucci, and then I'd consider it. Outside of that, there's no way. There's no way. JT says, traded Devontae Smith and Ladd McConkey for DJ Moore. What do you think? I don't love it. Not at all. I think as of this current moment in time, I probably have the value of Devontae Smith almost identical, if not more, than DJ Moore. And the fact that you also had to give up Ladd gives me concern. Looking at the rest of your team in terms of context, JT, you have CeeDee Lamb, you have Waddle, you have Brian Thomas Jr. I don't know if I love that trade. I really don't. I mean, look, you're asking the guy that really loves Devontae Smith about trading away Devontae Smith. So inherently, I'm already going to be a little bit hesitant on it. But then the Ladd McConkey, situation comes along, and then it just makes it kind of the final nail in the coffin there. So I don't love it. Jason Rodriguez sends in a follow-up question. Thank you, Jason. Says running backs are Mostert, Jalen Wright, Bijan, J.K. Dobbins, and Gus. Very well. Wide receivers are Kupp, J-Mo, Waddle, and Tank. Tank, I'm assuming, is your Tank Adele. Very well. Not Tank Bigsby. Christian Kirk. Okay. Dak owner has Josh Allen. He's starting Sharp/Justice Hill as his running backs, and Hill, Deontay, and Flowers. Should I offer something for Dak? Okay. Let's scroll back up here really quickly to find your prior question, Jason. So your prior question was Geno. If you can trade for Dak, I have no issue. I think that'd be great. That'd be awesome. But again, understand that you don't need to, considering the upcoming matchups for Geno. Now, if you would like to, in the coming weeks, make a trade in which you can get him, fantastic, great, let's go for it, especially considering, again, the Josh Allen team, which will not need another quarterback on roster until Josh Allen hits a bye week, which, if I'm not mistaken, the Buffalo Bills don't have a bye week until like week 11. Maybe my memory serves me wrong. No, it's week 12. Okay, very well. So in this circumstance, yeah, let's try to go for it. Let's try to get Dak Prescott if you can. I don't know what kind of positional needs he has. At running back, obviously, it's pretty apparent that Sharps and Justice Hill are pretty down in the dumps. So you could look to try to make a move here in terms of like, in your position, I don't want to trade away J.K. Dobbins or Gus. Like they're the combo for that backfield. Then you have Bijan. Then you have an injured Mostert and Wright. So like really you can't give him a running back. You can try to give him Gus and J.K. Dobbins, a tandem combo, but then you're going to have to ask for a quarterback and an extra player in return. Like he'd have to give you Dak and Flowers. You know what I mean? Which at that point, he might be broken. Or maybe you just try to trade for, Tyreek Hill and see if he's broken completely mentally by what happened over the course of, the last couple hours here. AJ sends in a question and says, I have Christian McCaffrey. Trade Collins/Rice for Mason. No. Take it easy. Hold on. AJ, no. We're not doing that. I'd rather trade away Christian McCaffrey than have to give up that high of a value for a backup running back in the, position of Mason. So in this circumstance, I understand that you're trying to establish and get the full backfield kind of value for Christian McCaffrey by trading for Mason. But in this circumstance, giving away Collins/or Rice would be a disaster. So in this circumstance, you have London, you have Thomas, you have Pickens, you have Coleman, you have Connor, you have D-Will, Bigsby. Yeah, in your situation, like you can be like, hey, best I'll give you is either Brian Thomas Jr. or I'll give you Pickens. And that is it. And if he doesn't want to trade it, the door is closed, no more. And let it be. because you'd be giving up too much value for something that, again, perceivably, if Christian McCaffrey retains his health for the remainder of the season, is just a 1 week play for this week. Yes, it's insurance for the future weeks, but I don't know if I'm willing to spend up that much for the insurance. It's not worth it. Jared Tyrese sends in a question. Thank you, Jared. Jared says, Jamar Ford for JT and Garrett Wilson. Yeah, I'll take JT and Garrett Wilson instantly. No hesitation. If the offer is in your mailbox, insta accept. Give me Jonathan Taylor, give me Garrett Wilson rest of the season. If I had to add Diggs and Worthy, would you still take it? Okay, so if you had to add Diggs and Worthy, as in you're getting Worthy and you're giving up Diggs, it makes it less appealing, but still stomachable. Like I could still go for it. But wait. When you say if it has to include Diggs or Worthy, so you'd have to give 3 for 2. If you end up giving Worthy with that, can I stomach it? Yeah, I could still stomach it. It's closer in terms of potential upside value remainder of the season, but I still probably lean towards that JT Garrett Wilson side. I think it's very appealing rest of season there. Thank you for the question, Jared. Justin sends in a question. Justin Arbor says, Swift or Singletary this week? Standard PPR. So in a PPR this week, I'm probably playing Devin Singletary. Follow-up question. Also, start 3 and sit 1. McLaurin, McConkey, Reed, and Worthy. I'm sitting Reed. I'm starting the rest of those 3, Justin. Thank you for the question. I appreciate it. National Champ Rush follows up and says, trade Rachaad White for Marvin Harrison and Swift. If you need the wide receiver depth, let me go check your team from before National Champ Rush. Let me just concur. So the prior trade that you had was JJ for Marvin Harrison and Swift. So in this scenario of where you're only having to give Rachaad White for it, I'm okay with it, assuming you have running back depth. Because when you trade for Swift right now, I don't know if you can instantly start him for a couple weeks until we get some sort of semblance of consistency out of him to where we can actually legitimately trust that this offense can function as a whole with Caleb Williams under center. So you can do it as long as you have additional running back depth. Otherwise, once you do, I think it's a great trade. I'll take the Marvin Harrison side of that. Nick sends in a question. Nick Abner says, in a full PPR, my RB2 is either Ramondre Stevenson or David Montgomery. Or do I start both and sit Pickens? If it's my team, I'd legitimately start them both. I think they're just more valuable at this current circumstance. I know that Pickens has the upside of that touchdown, the deep receiving ball game. I just have a hard time sitting either of those two. I prefer Stevenson this week in a full PPR format, again, because of the receiving upside potential that he provides to our fantasy teams. But between Monty and Pickens, with Patrick Surtain this week, it's going to be a real test for him and Fields. I think I'd rather just default to playing Monty this week. Thank you for the question, Nick. Marcus Parker sends in a question. Thank you, Marcus. Says, in a standard PPR league, team is Anthony Richardson, Cook, Dobbins, Zamir, Jordan. Is that Jordan Brooks? Yeah. Jonathan Brooks, not Jordan Brooks. Jonathan Brooks. Kupp, Garrett Wilson, Amon-Ra, Shakir, Bowers. Is there a way to make this team any better? Looking at your wide receivers, Garrett Wilson, Amon-Ra St. Brown, and Cooper Kupp, there's no getting better than that. Sure, you can get CeeDee Lamb, but ultimately what you would have to give and what you would get in return is not going to improve the team dramatically. So in this circumstance, your wide receivers, untouchable. The game that James Cook just had, I keep calling him Dalvin. Even at home, I call him Dalvin when I'm watching the game. I can't get Dalvin out of my mind. Anyway, Cook and Dobbins, you'll be able to survive with until the return of Jonathan Brooks. You're good there. Anthony Richardson's great. Bowers played incredibly well in week 1, had himself a great volume of opportunity, which is very promising. You're not really going to majorly, you can't upgrade wide receiver or RB1 or QB1. So technically you can upgrade Dobbins as your RB2 to something else, but that's under the assumption that you're trading him away with another piece to get another RB, which again, will take a little bit of time before we do so. But until then, I think you got a pretty solid team across the board there, Marcus. Very difficult for me to just objectively tell you that there's a way to improve this, considering, you could try to sell high on James Cook. I don't think that's out of the realm of possibility. If this week, once again, a running back of the caliber of Jonathan Taylor doesn't have a major week, for example, he goes for 15 this week, and the Jonathan Taylor manager says, hey, I'll be willing to give you Jonathan Taylor for James Cook. At that point, yes, we can make some moves, but again, that is going to be future potential moves inbound if, in fact, teams are open to that kind of value. James Romo sends in a follow-up. Let's hear, James. Can I follow your question? Where is it? Okay, James says, I'm a Rams fan, as am I. Thank you, James. Says, do you think Corum ends up having standalone value, or is he just a handcuff? I think he's just a handcuff. I mean, look, as a Rams fan, we know that rookie running backs, when they're brought in, don't have any value. Even the year in which Cam Akers was drafted, he came in and immediately just was in a kind of running back by committee situation with Darrell Henderson. And I'm trying to remember the other running back's name that we had. Bickerback, kind of a downhill runner. Goodness gracious, I can see his face, but I can't remember. I'm not going to even. Okay, let's see. Rams. Gosh, why can't I click it in my brain? Let's go back to 2022. Let's go to the Rams running backs. Darrell Henderson. Malcolm Brown. There it is. So even back then, there wasn't a hell of a lot of usage for rookie running backs. It took until week 12 against the 49ers for Akers to break out in his rookie year. So again, there's a lot of time between now and a potential standalone role for Corum, and I don't think it's coming anytime soon in this scenario. So in the context of your question, I think you're kind of just holding him. If you have Kyren Williams, if you don't have Kyren, and you need wide receiver or running back depth for upcoming injuries and stuff, I don't mind the idea of you dropping him for Myers. Again, he is purely just handcuff as it currently stands. They would have played him in week 1 if it was anything other than that. Craig sends in a question, says, half PPR, trade Ramondre Stevenson for ETN. I would do that immediately. Give me ETN rest of the season. Thank you for the question. Again, when I just look at these two offenses as a whole, and I look at the New England Patriots and what they're equipped with, they have Jacoby Brissett at quarterback. They have no receiving help. They are eventually going to, yes, they won week 1. Beautiful. Fantastic. If you're a Patriots fan, relish in this. Because unfortunately, the reality of the situation is if you're a true Patriots fan, you know that this offense and this team is not equipped to continue to streak wins together because their offense is going to hold them back. And when they're in negative game scripts and they cannot keep close with teams, obviously the defense is going to do their job. Gerard Mayo's got those guys going in the right direction for sure. But once they get into pretty bad game scripts, it's going to be tough. ETN, I think, just has inherently more value based on the offense and how it's going to approach for the remainder of the season. Jacksonville Jaguars being a far more successful team and finding the end zone far more often than what Ramondre will potentially be granted in terms of his opportunity. Jonathan Lee sends in a question. Says, likely for JMO or likely for Amari Cooper? Sorry, likely and Amari Cooper for Marvin Harrison. Both are good, question mark. Yeah, honestly, I kind of prefer the second one. I'd like to get a piece of Marvin Harrison Jr. if you can. Again, Marvin Harrison in week 1 didn't get much targets. Kyler Murray says it's not his job. Really, the fact of the matter was that Buffalo Bills secondary, we saw it once again tonight. They're so damn good. I said it in week 1. Be careful of Marvin Harrison. That secondary for the Buffalo Bills is no effing joke. And they showed it again today. I mean, they picked off Tua a lot. And again, Tua made blatant mistakes. But again, when you're in the right position all the time as a secondary, you're going to make plays consistently. And of course, you're going to make it difficult for opposing offenses to find their number one receiving option. Tyreek Hill, a no-show today, even prior to Tua's injury. So Marvin Harrison, if you can get a hand on him, let's go for it. Okay, let's see here. David Diaz sends in a question. Thank you, David. David says, trade Worthy and Addison for Puka. Yeah. I mean, if you can afford it, let's see. What do you have in terms of context? Would you trade? Okay, so first and foremost, with no context as to what your roster looks like, I don't mind that. Because again, I'm a risky son of a gun, and I like the Rams, and I'd like to get Puka on my team. So if I can wait until week 7, and I think I can survive, even though I'm giving up wide receiver depth to get a wide receiver that I'm not going to be able to use, if you've drafted correctly and you have the depth to be able to survive until then, beautiful. If not, probably not worth it. But ultimately, Addison's injured, so it's basically Puka for Worthy. I'm willing to take Puka in this circumstance. As for your second question, or would you rather trade Devontae Smith and Worthy for Chase? I was going to say let's do both, but ultimately, I kind of like that second trade more. I think it just helps you now, and there's no really concern for injury risk for Puka's return. So I think I'd rather just go with that Jamar Chase trade. Now, your next question, or Ramondre Stevenson, Worthy, and Addison for Debo. Now, I'd rather just take the Jamar Chase part of that. That's fine by me. That works, David. Thank you. Drew Gonzalez sends in a question. Thank you, Drew. says, where do you rank Achane rest of season amongst running backs, PPR? It depends on whether or not Tua Tagovailoa is healthy. Based on how he's performed in the first 2 weeks, especially within the receiving game, it's hard not to have him in the top 5. I mean, really, that is what we've mentioned it all off season. Is he capable of top 5 upside? Abso-freaking-lutely. With so many injuries surrounding him, though, that could be the ultimate downside of spiral if, in fact, we're going to be missing Tua Tagovailoa. Because in the absence of Tua, we could be, sure, a great running team, but if people are stacking the box with 8 or 9 defenders, we're in trouble. Which, again, they'll never be able to do so because of Tyreek Hill's presence, but still, it's going to be way more difficult to run the ball effectively. So, yeah, that's kind of where I have him valued rest of the season, assuming, of course, Tua is ready to go. Sammy sends in a question. Thank you, Sammy. Says, hey, Andrew, happy Thursday. It is a happy Thursday. Unfortunately, the game wasn't great, but that is typically going to be Thursday games for the remainder of the season. Again, when you have to play on a Sunday and then flip it on a short week and once again play on a Thursday, you are putting your body through hell. These guys, I really do feel bad for them. But it is what it is. It is the situation. Your question. I'm having a toss-up between Worthy and Dell as my flex this week. And should I consider Mason over Jacobs as my RB2 due to his questionable status and the bad matchup versus the Colts? I don't think the matchup is bad against the Colts. I think the fact that his quarterback is Malik Willis this week is what is ultimately just the negative factor of his potential upside. Now, yes, is he questionable? But you perhaps maybe haven't had Josh Jacobs in prior seasons. For those of us who are Josh Jacobs frequents, you will realize that every single week for the remainder of the season, he will be questionable. It is not something that you should be alarmed about. Only once he misses practices on a consecutive basis will we ever begin to honestly panic. So in this scenario, between Worthy and Dell, first and foremost, I like both those options. Considering Marquise Hollywood-Brown is probably not playing, I'd kind of lean in the direction of playing Worthy there, but they're back-to-back in my rankings nearly identical because, again, both of them are going to have to find value in terms of an upside touchdown to make their given week. Obviously, Dell will get more opportunity, but he also has more target competition, respectively. On the other side, again, between Mason and Jacobs, I'm playing Mason as long as Christian McCaffrey is out over, I would say, 90% of the running back field this week. Mason is a top 5 upside player in the absence of McCaffrey, and that should be treated as such, regardless of who else you have. In the case of Jacobs, again, tough matchup because of Malik Willis making it a tough one. Thank you. We move on to a question from National Champ Rush, who says, who would you start rest of season, Purdy or Jaden Daniels? Probably going to be, okay, here's the thing, right? Jaden Daniels, assuming he can stay healthy every single game, will outvalue Purdy objectively. Again, what was the stat that I mentioned before the season? And I mentioned probably 1,000 times about former Heisman Trophy winning quarterbacks averaging over 17 fantasy points per game. Obviously, Jaden Daniels is living up to that. Caleb Williams is on the opposite side of that overall conversation, but hopefully will bounce back. There's a thing where if you're a former Heisman winning trophy quarterback and you come into the National Football League, more often than not, when I mean more often than not, I mean like literally 9 out of the last 10 are going to be 17 and a half plus fantasy points in their rookie season. Jaden Daniels should be able to eclipse that number based on his rushing upside and his comfortability within that offense already. So it'd probably be Daniels. But Purdy, again, once Christian McCaffrey returns, once we get a full Ayuk, we'll be able to very easily compete because what we didn't have from Purdy in this last week's game against the New York Jets on Monday night was the easy dump offs to McCaffrey. Usually McCaffrey gets himself 5-6 receptions and is going to put up, 40, 50 receiving yards there and is going to potentially even give, the upside of a passing touchdown for Purdy. Again, Christian McCaffrey last season had 7 receiving touchdowns. So Purdy's value will go up as the season progresses, but for right now, it's Jaden Daniels assuming he can stay healthy. Jared Tyree sends in a follow-up question, says running back targets with Diggs or Jamar, full PPR. If you're going to trade away Jamar Chase, you have to trade for a top 5 running back because I'm giving away a top 5 receiver ultimately, right? So unless you're getting back the value of someone of the caliber of Saquon, Breece Hall, Bijan Robinson, really it's not worth it. As for Diggs, coming off of a huge 2-touchdown week, which again will not be a consistent factor. We can hope that he scores double-digit touchdowns this season, but again, it's probably not going to be a consistent part of his overall upside. In that circumstance, if I'm trading away Diggs, Listen, like I'll keep saying it. If you can somehow get, and I'm going to say this low-key, if you can somehow get ETN, get him on your damn team now. If you can somehow swindle, do it. Even if you have to be like, yeah, you don't need him. Look at Tank Bigsby, had 12 carries. Oh, look at that. He fumbled out of the end zone. Try. Just try. Thank you. Can Jacobs ever get a receiving touchdown? I don't know. Does he ever have one? Let's see here. Josh Jacobs stats. Let's go look at Pro Football Reference and see if he's ever scored a receiving touchdown. He's never scored a receiving touchdown in his career. That's crazy. I didn't know that. That's a good piece of trivia. Let's see here. Serge sends in a question. Thank you, Serge. Serge says, start 3, Flowers, Metcalf. I don't even know what that name is. Marvin Harrison, Dell, Brian Robinson Jr. What is that name? Maserati Marv. Yo, I'm like, what are we doing? Because it got cut off halfway through. Serge, my bad. I was like, what the heck is that? Okay, so Flowers, Metcalf, Harrison, Dell, Robinson. If we're starting 3 in a full PPR scoring format, Marvin Harrison plays. Ultimately, I think the next best 2 plays. Oh, yo, that's tough. The next best plays. I kind of want to play Brian Robinson. And then after him, I probably kind of want to play Metcalf. Metcalf, Marv, Brian Robinson Jr. is kind of where I'm leaning towards. Rusty Wright says, miss you, bro. Thank you, Rusty. Long time no see. Says, in a half PPR tattoo league, I got Kyler and Jaden Daniels. Very well. Achane, Cook, ETN, Chase Brown, Jalen Wright, Kupp, Hill, Amari Cooper, Worthy, Roma Dunze, AD Mitchell, and Kincaid. Don't want to drop anyone, but I want a backup tight end, plus worried about Hill with no Tua. Advice. At this point, until we get more information regarding Tua and how long he could potentially be out for, let's not be too concerned about it. Let's just let it kind of marinate and see what comes of it. Until then, if you're looking to potentially drop a piece from this offense, it's AD Mitchell. That's how you get your backup tight end. Otherwise, keep Hill as is currently. Thank you. Okay, guys. So typically what I like to do is I like to keep these live streams at about an hour to an hour and a half. I know every now and then I'll go to 2 hours, 2.5 hours. I think yesterday's was 2 hours somehow. But I just want to keep it short, sweet, simple. I got hidden gems coming out tomorrow. So for those of you guys who are trying to find some hidden gems on the waivers to potentially play this upcoming week, be sure to check that out. Again, earlier today, I did drop my video in regards to quarterback and tight end rankings at a top 16 capacity. Again, if you guys are interested in that, check it out. Otherwise, again, if you guys want my rankings every single Sunday morning for the remainder of the season, check out Underdog Fantasy. Sign up today using code Andrew. All you got to do, again, is be eligible based on, where's this map? Based on this map. If you're eligible based on the current location you're at, you've never used the code and made a first-time deposit in the past, then you're good to go. You can get those rankings. All you got to do is use code Andrew and make a first-time deposit minimum of $10, or you can check out, my Patreon. All of that information, all those rankings, all that kind of jazz, and unlimited questions are available for those of you who are interested. Thank you very much. For those of you who are Patreon members or potentially in the live chat right now, I am going to be ending the stream and trying to get to those questions as soon as possible. There's a lot of you wanting me, so be patient. I appreciate your patience in that overall circumstance. Again, thank you. All right, guys, that's where I'm going to call it. I appreciate y'all coming through, supporting the channel. I'll be back tomorrow with Hidden Gems. Subsequently, again, tomorrow we'll break the record for the most streams ever in a row for this channel. So hopefully we'll continue in that direction, continuing to build a streak. I'll be back tomorrow for a video, tomorrow for a live stream, Saturday afternoon live stream, 1 o'clock to 3 p.m. And then that's PST, Pacific Standard Time. And then additionally, Sunday morning live stream starting at 7 a.m. PST to 10 a.m. prior to kickoff. Thank you, everybody, for watching. I appreciate y'all. And that is where we're going to leave it. I'm going to cue the beautiful double helix as it is the best guitar solo. And until next time, I'll see you guys. Peace. right, everybody stop the music. Everybody stay calm. Jared sent in a question. Okay, Jared, if you can hear me. The camera's off. The lights are off. Everything's packed up. So, to answer your question, Jared, do you like Diggs for Amari Cooper / Javonte? No, I'd rather keep Diggs. Unless you're... Listen, I think buying Javonte Williams right now might be a little bit too risky. So in this circumstance, I'd keep it as is. Just keep Diggs on your roster. I preferred him preseason. I prefer him now. And with the coupling of Javonte, it just scares me because of McLaughlin's volume of touches that he's going to continue to get in a lot of these negative game scripts. Okay. Thank you very much, Jared. Have a nice, wonderful night, the rest of you. Till next time, I'll see you. Peace.